If you look at stock prices across the games industry right now, you'll find that the entire games industry, quite a few prominent major companies in gaming have all crashed in their stock price. So right here, for example, Shinobi 602 highlighted on Blue Sky how the likes of Take-Two Interactive, Roblox, CD Projekt, Unity Software, among many more, have seen their stock price all dip in the same day. Even companies like Nintendo, you'll find that on that exact same day, January 30th, they saw a major dip in their stock price. So people might be wondering what the heck is going on. Well, Shinobi 602 very briefly explains it here, how all of this is a response to the launch of Google's Project Genie, with investors believing that it's basically over for video games being handcrafted and that video games will now all be made entirely by AI. So what is Project Genie? Well, right here we have a tweet from Google itself introducing Project Genie, an experimental research prototype powered by Genie 3, our world model, and lets you prompt an interactive world into existence and then step inside. So yeah, basically you type in prompts and you can interact with what output AI produces. So this individual typed in a photorealistic alpine meadow with blah, 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 and the character is a Shiba Inu, and that's kind of what Google's Project Genie generated. And this is an area where you can use your keyboard to navigate through. And this is something that's out right now for the public to be able to play around with and test out if they so desire. That is, if you want to pay for Google's AI Ultra subscription plan at the low price of just $125 a month for 3 months, and then you'll be paying $250 a month for the time that you want to use this feature. So yeah, insane price point that is clearly not meant for the masses, but for the people who did engage with Project Genie, what they found was that as impressive as this technology is, the fact that you can type in a couple words and describe the world that you want and the character you want, and you get some kind of interactive experience, the fact remains that this technology is incredibly limited. The fact that any of this can be done at all, again, really impressive. But whether it'll replace game developers, whether this is how games will be made moving forward, that aspect is questionable, especially given all the current limitations surrounding Google's Genie AI tool, which can only produce an interactive experience that lasts just 1 minute, only runs at 24 frames per second, and caps out at 720p. Not to mention that the experiences also lack stability, with one demo featuring a racetrack changing mid-gameplay. There's just the general lack of persistence with the stuff that AI generates. Project Genie's AI model is just trying to constantly make predictions, and so you could walk back and forth from one location to another, and you'll find that when you come back to a location, it'll have changed in some features. They're also not video games. There are no gameplay systems aside from just moving around and interacting with the 3D rendered world. So you can see right here some of the things that people have generated. There's no audio. It's purely video. And yeah, I mean, again, the fact that this is at all possible is impressive, but you can see there's really nothing here. This is more of this experimental toy that doesn't really work. And it's something that is gonna be a nice novelty thing to play around with for a few hours, and then you move on, because these are not video games. There are no gameplay systems. There's no real gameplay here. There's no there are no goals to pursue. There's nothing really to overcome. You just kind of walk around what Google Genie here generates, and all of it still looks very uncanny. For example, right here you can see, if we maximize this video, that Genie doesn't know how to properly produce a chef cutting vegetables. It's very robotic, very dead. All of it is very uncanny. It all looks very artificial, very simulated. And as we scroll further down, you'll find plenty of other examples of things that people came up with. Real-time GPS, fully functional with no game engine, cells in the human body simulator. You can play as a rubber tire in some neighborhood, so on and so forth. Some of the stuff that people are coming up with is just really weird and bizarre, but basically, where your imagination takes you, you can kind of generate and play around in this world for, again, a minute, but with not much in the way of proper, genuine gameplay and quests and rewards and things to do and achieve. So the fact that investors are looking at Genie 3 and freaking out, saying, oh my God, I got to pull my stocks out of the video game companies because they're about to go defunct because Genie 3 is just going to take over. is just like, as Tom Warren here, investors know nothing about video games, part 5,328. It's incredibly stupid to assume that Genie 3 can now like make GTA 6. Like nothing can make GTA 6 except for humans. It feels like they just looked at a couple headlines and a couple clips and went, oh shit, like this is it for the games industry. Now AI will take over game development, when we're nowhere close to even remotely achieving anything resembling that as of the present moment. Again, some people will find it like a fun thing to just mess around with. You can recreate blockbusters here and walk around and have that experience if you want, or you can go back to when Jesus was crucified on the cross or whatever. You can type that in and Genie will produce something in that regard. But it's important to note that what Genie is doing isn't actually creation. It's making nothing really new. It's just taking information that is public, kind of shoving it all together and then shitting it out. All that Genie ultimately generates is just an amalgam of other people's work, of stolen work. And it really is very brazen on that front, because people can literally make existing games that are just exact copies of, you know, what other companies have made and just have that experience in Genie. So for example, Min Choi here tweeted that, holy moly, Genie 3 just created this mock 3D game world from Breath of the Wild. Now, obviously, this is not literally the video game Breath of the Wild, nowhere close to it, but Genie 3 did take like all of the public information and data and footage that's out there and compile it all together to spit out this slop right here of basically just like Genie 3's version of Breath of the Wild, one with no gameplay systems, with a world that is completely empty, but that took references from the original work and just basically like recreated it through the AI slot machine. There's no originality here. This is the definition of copy and paste. As somebody quote tweeted here, AI does not create, it only steals and then shits out. And there's tons of examples of Genie 3 basically creating copyrighted work. So for example, right here, somebody created an instant Dragon Ball Z game from a prompt. Though again, to call this a game would be woefully misleading. It is an interactive world in the sense that you can walk around in a 3D space that was generated by your prompt. But a game involves more than that. It involves gameplay systems that none of Genie 3's creations ultimately have. It just doesn't have that capability, and it's a far more complex thing to tackle. Here's another one showing Genie's version of Mario Kart. Here we have Genie's version of Dark Souls. Here's somebody replying to this creation with, Genie simply stole some assets from Dark Souls 3, but you don't know that because you're na capra de mierda ignorante, which is Portuguese for something along the lines of like ignorant piece of shit. Here's a games journalist who retweeted this video and just said, computer, make me a shitty Dark Souls. I can walk around in for 40 seconds. And that's the thing. This right here is just literally a copy of Dark Souls. Like you can immediately tell the source material for this generation. It is straight up just stolen work. Hell, even the HUD and the menu and all these things, you know, what little there is of it, all of it is directly lifted from Dark Souls. There's no real creation happening here. It's just a regurgitation of what already exists, only made worse, and just like grinded through this sausage meat machine that turns everything into just minced garbage. Freaking Fortnite can be recreated using Genie 3 for you to walk around in for, again, like a minute and do absolutely nothing in. So on and so forth. Same with like Pokemon. And this particular prompt not only steals from Nintendo, but also from other artists, as noted here by a community note. Part of this video was made with the help of referencing 3D fan art by George K, self-evident when comparing the two. Users should be able to know what the source of references is if they so desire. So again, it's an amalgam of work stolen from multiple sources, just kind of all shoved together and then output in this experience that is just the most bare bones thing you can imagine. When you hear about all of the ways in which AI is negatively impacting society, harming the environment, helping spread misinformation and deepfakes, the way it's consuming so much power and water, the way it's consuming all of the resources that consumers used to be able to enjoy affordably, like anything involving DRAM, because all of that's been hoarded up by AI companies. When you think about all of that, the fact that the end result is ultimately this kind of crap is just really depressing to think about. The fact that all of that negative impact is being justified for stuff like this that ultimately does nothing. And the list of examples just goes on and on. Here's somebody else here on YouTube who basically managed to recreate LA Noire, but in a different city. We even have entire articles from news outlets like The Verge talking about their experience with Project Genie 3 and how they were able to basically just take Nintendo properties and recreate them through this interactive world AI system. Again, just very blatant. Now, through this article, it is mentioned that while once upon a time, you could easily just type in, basically make me something similar to Mario 64, and it would create that for you. Apparently, shortly before publishing this article, Project Genie stopped letting me generate worlds based on Super Mario 64 due to, quote, interests of third-party content providers. So it looks like Google is aware of the legal trouble that they can get in with all the copyright infringement going on with Genie 3. But that issue hasn't been entirely resolved because, for example, with Project Genie, there are ways to circumvent not being able to directly type, make me this specific thing that is copyrighted. So, for example, The Verge notes right here that Project Genie wouldn't generate a world that I prompted with a scenario of Kingdom Hearts. But the second that this individual was a lot more vague about it and described something close to Kingdom Hearts in the prompt, the AI output was just literally Kingdom Hearts, as this article puts it. When I removed the specific names of characters and wrote descriptions of them instead, Project Genie generated a thumbnail preview of the world featuring characters that were dead ringers for Sora, Donald, Goofy, Jack Skellington, and Cloud. But when I tried to generate the actual experience, Project Genie blocked me. And The Verge also highlights that as impressive as it is that Genie 3 is possible at all with current technology, thinking about how much technology must have advanced for us to be at this stage where we can literally type some prompts and it just generates a really bland but still interactive world. Despite all of this, it doesn't change the fact that these are not video games. The worlds don't have scores or anything to strive for, so there's nothing to do but walk or jump around. Even if there were specific things to do, the input lag made the worlds basically unplayable. And that's on top of the fact that the resolution was limited to 720p, the frame rate was limited to 24 frames per second, and all of this happens in the cloud. So if you have internet issues, then you're going to have trouble experiencing these worlds in a responsive manner. This is what got investors all riled up and made them think that they need to pull out of video game companies because they're about to become obsolete. That's why stocks crashed, because that was the mentality when they saw just a couple clips of Genie 3 and got the completely wrong idea about what it can do, what its capabilities are, and just how far away such technology is from fully being able to create full-ass video games. The response from social media has been to ultimately denounce what's going on here with Genie 3, especially with how easy it is to create copyrighted material, to recreate rather and reproduce copyrighted material. And so people are posting things that will encourage source material companies to look at Genie 3 and maybe take legal action. Here's somebody both jokingly but also kind of seriously posting, "Hello, Nintendo of America. I had no idea you could use your intellectual properties like Zelda to train trash AIs like this one. This video made me lose interest in the Zelda saga like many other fans. You should take action against this AI tool." I've seen a bunch of posts from people on social media basically tagging companies and saying, "Wow, I just saw this clip from your game and I didn't realize that your games could look this garbage. I will no longer be buying your games," just to instigate companies taking action against a technology that can reproduce works in a way that it could be confused for the original work. The reason game companies issue DMCAs to things that resemble their game or that utilize their IP in ways that don't align with their ideals is because they don't want that external stuff to do harm to the brand image of their IPs. But AI is doing just that by presenting slop that resembles the original work, but isn't really the original work. It's just a worse version of it. And so the idea is to get companies riled up about the way their property is being used to produce slop that showcases an inferior version of their product that, the public could confuse as the real thing. Some people have gone as far as creating fake videos of Genie 3 and present them as something that Genie 3 output. But you can see right here, the quality, the frame rate, and the resolution far too high for it to be a legit Genie 3 video. In fact, there's a community note here saying this video was not made with Genie 3, but with MAGO, and is likely not playable either though that's not confirmed. I don't believe it is playable. Video was altered to try to connect it to Genie 3 to give it relevance after today's announcement from Google. So yeah, this is how easy it is to use AI to spread misinformation. And the fact that there are no regulations in place, the fact that companies don't care about this stuff and are allowing people to spread misinformation in this way highlights how little they care about beneficially using the technology. And this blog post from Google presenting Project Genie, there's one line here that I scoff at, one sentence that reads, "Our mission is to build AI responsibly to benefit humanity." That's hilarious given that Google's Genie 3 is environmentally harmful, very resource intensive, and it also continuously creates slop that is just basically stolen work that could very easily be seen as copyright infringement. And the thing is, for a while, people believe that Genie 3 did create this particular interactive experience, quote unquote, this fake interactive experience. And that's probably a big reason for why Genie 3 was perceived as more capable by some who are misinformed by this online activity than it really is. We're looking at AI being used to spread misinformation about the capabilities of other AI technologies, creating this false sense of oh my God, the video games industry is doomed. This is the level at which we're at with Genie 3 where it can create interactive experiences like this, when that is far from the truth. That is so much of how AI technology is being used and exploited because companies are creating this technology without thinking about the consequences, without putting the proper guardrails in place. The fact that Genie 3 hasn't put guardrails for copyrighted material, the fact that you can just recreate Breath of the Wild or Kingdom Hearts or Metroid Prime or whatever it is you type in there, the fact that there are no security measures for that highlights the level of disregard for the fact that this is very much just creating a product out of work that you stole from other people who did not give you permission to train your AI with their work. Others are taking to social media to have a little fun and create mock versions of those messages saying, "Wow, look at what Genie 3 created." So this individual said, "Wow, look at what I made." The prompt: French woman has to climb through a world that defies logic, flying objects everywhere. And it's just literally gameplay footage from Expedition 33. Here's another one for Starfield. Somebody saying, "Wow, I typed the prompt. Make me a quadruple A Bethesda-style space RPG about exploring moons. Focus entirely on rock textures. Ignore actual gameplay content," while showing just gameplay from Starfield, basically as a way to either mock AI or mock some of the games through these kinds of AI tweets. Here's one more saying, "I'm speechless." The prompt: "Make a game that is better than GTA 6 made by Leslie Benzies." And this is just mind's eye, one of the worst games that was ever released. Nick Tech here jokingly saying GTA 6 is cooked. This is the future of gaming. Yeah, mostly highlighting that what AI can produce right now is just so below par in terms of quality compared to handcrafted content that is given that level of love, care, and that level of humanity that makes our art. It all just highlights how far away AI is from an artistic standpoint, especially being able to replace humans. AI as a technology and as a tool, it does have a lot of powerful elements that does pave the road to efficiencies in certain areas. But, automating art is the last thing people want. It's one thing to automate technical processes that genuinely makes the lives of people easier. But, just killing art through slop that is all just homogenized because it all draws from the same stolen works. That's just sad to think about. And it's a future that just about nobody who enjoys the mediums that they enjoy want, including, of course, video games. And for those who are still worried about Genie 3 and its potential to just be able to make games by typing prompts and it removing the handcraftedness of video games, here's somebody who is a software engineer, has written over 250,000 lines of game engine code and talked about why Genie 3 isn't what people think it is. Basically describing Genie 3 as a technology that can create interactive worlds through which there might be able to be interactive storytelling once they're able to add sound generation, longer context, more control, and whatnot. But when it comes to video games in particular, due to all of the additional things involved with a video game, mechanical mastery, nostalgia, progression systems, so on and so forth, those are the things that Genie 3 is completely clueless about and can't create. Interactive worlds allow you to walk around in them and interact with a couple things here and there, but there's no gamification of anything. You can experience things by walking around, but you can't really be an active participant in what's happening due to the lack of all of those elements that make video games video games. With multiplayer games, it is highlighted right here that multiplayer needs every client to agree on physics every frame. Speedrunners need frame-perfect consistency across thousands of attempts. Competitive play needs rules that don't drift. You can't have ranked when reality is probabilistic. That's the thing with Genie 3. It's constantly probabilistic. There's nothing that is truly set in stone. Again, you could go to one place and come back to your original location, and that location might be a little different from how you remember it. The behaviors of the world are not consistent because AI is constantly predicting and constantly generating. It's constantly like procedural. That does not pave the road to an environment where proper video games with established mechanics and established elements that make video games can be hosted. So this individual believes that world models are competitive with passive media rather than active media like video games. Long term, they'll probably eat the renderer, generating pixels instead of rasterizing triangles, but game logic systems and author constraints, that's a different problem entirely, and one perfectly suited to cogen agents. Here's another individual who gave their take. This is Sebastian, who formerly worked as principal engineer at Unity and Ubisoft, who believes that game dev investors don't seem to understand technology, highlighting all the ways in which Genie 3 is severely limited, and then saying that this is a super nice tech for virtual experiences. Unlimited detail was eventually used for that purpose too, but I don't see a clear path for this kind of tech becoming a game dev tool anytime soon. Now, there are some folks who are more bullish on this technology. So, for example, Matthew Bromberg here, who's the CEO of Unity, talked about the possibility of having Gen AI like Genie 3, creating these like interactive worlds, then being able to download that into Unity and then like use that as a foundation and go from there. Generally, people are not particularly enticed by Matthew's proposition here, because then all gaming becomes homogenized and it's all drawing from the same pool of knowledge and the same pool of creative works rather than genuine new creations that were made from scratch. That maybe took inspiration, but all of it was handcrafted from scratch rather than it just taking things from other games, like directly lifting them. Now, look, I don't know what the future holds. It may very well be that, technology like Genie 3 becomes so advanced down the line that it is able to create its own gameplay systems. But even if it does, all of that will ultimately be lifted directly from existing games. When you swing a sword using Genie 3, you will probably be able to be like, wait, that animation, that sword swing was from The Legend of Zelda, or that was definitely from Dark Souls, or that was definitely from Devil May Cry, or whatever it is. Or these shooting mechanics, they're definitely directly lifted from like Doom or Call of Duty. It feels exactly like those games. Like that's how it'll be. Now, maybe this will be a great tool to like quickly create prototypes and stuff like that. Like that's one way in which maybe this could be kind of beneficial. But if this AI tool becomes the only way to make games and like the humans are being replaced and everything is being AI-fied, which is what a lot of like AAA game publishers and companies would go for to cut costs, that's when we get genuine slop. When AI is at the forefront and humanity is given the back seat instead of humanity being at the forefront and them utilizing AI to make certain processes easier, but ultimately all of it still being handcrafted. It just generally feels like this technology that will be exploited rather than used in proper ways that pave the road to genuinely high quality products whose processes are improved by AI rather than fully replaced by AI. And in turn, the ultimate quality of the output is just slop. But at the same time, to get to that point where you can just type in a prompt and create full-fledged games with all the things that make video games, not just being able to walk around in a world, but genuinely interact with them, for there to be genuine stakes, for there to be genuine quests and people and NPCs and like crafted goals and rewards and all the things that make a video game fun. Those are the things that technology like Genie 3 are still nowhere close to being able to like execute on. Right now, what Genie 3 shows is so like prototypical. It's not even alpha. It's like pre-alpha. It is such a like bare bones version of what it's trying to accomplish that it feels like the full potential of what this technology could become, this whole idea of, being able to type prompts and create full-fledged video games, that is still such a distant concept that investors freaking out and like crashing the entire games industry because they are thinking that video game companies are about to become obsolete and that game developers, human developers are about to become obsolete. Like things couldn't be further from the truth at this stage. And there are multiple experts all citing the same thing. Maybe one day Genie 3 can be like a supplement to game development, but replacing game development in its entirety, like we're not even close to that. We're not even within spitting distance of that, is what seems to be the general consensus. But yeah, bottom line is Genie 3, really crazy technology, really impressive technology, but it's also some of the most useless technology I've seen. And the amount of money that's being poured on stuff like this, and the amount of resources that are being spent, and the amount of harm that's being done to the environment, and the amount of like copyright infringement that's happening, and all of these things, as impressive as the capability of this technology is, the fact that it's possible at all, it is like the most nothing burger of a multi-billion-dollar expenditure that I've seen. That sure may grow over time, but in its current state, it's a fun thing to fuck around with for a few hours, and then you realize just how hollow it really is. There's nothing really truly handcrafted and human here that makes something genuinely compelling and something worth experiencing. But that's just one man's take. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on the current state of generative AI, Genie 3 as a technology. What do you see its potential being? How do you foresee its utilization impacting society? And what do you think about the way investors jump the gun with extracting their money out of companies who they thought would be obsolete, thinking that Genie 3 is a lot more capable than it really is? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.